Coming up on today's episode of the Airborne Unlimited, GA organizations reiterating ATC privatization concerns. FAA needs additional funding to support UAS growth. And GoFundMe campaign established an aviation dispute with Mexico. Hello, I'm Christopher C. Odom. It's March 24th, 2017, and this is Airborne Unlimited. With the need to authorize the FAA before September 30th of this year, a host of GA leaders have joined together to send letters to House and Senate transportation leaders underscoring their real and long-standing concerns regarding a concept being pushed by some big airlines regarding ATC. Specifically, the organization cited concerns over a proposal promoted by some big airlines for the creation of a new governance and funding model for our nation's aviation system based on systems in other parts of the world. The general aviation community has very real and long-standing concerns, which include, but are not limited to, user fees. The letter states, these concerns are based on our operating experiences in these foreign systems and the impact they have had on general aviation. Along with EAA, the letters were signed by numerous other organizations, including AEA, Commemorative Air Force, and NBAA. In a memo dated March 7, 2017, the FAA asked its Drone Advisory Committee Task Group 3 to explore ways to increase funding for the integration of UAVs into national airspace. The memo, written by Victoria B. Wasmer, Deputy Administrator and Chief Next Gen Officer in DAC-designated federal official, states, the FAA would welcome consideration of a broad array of options, including industry assuming a lead role for certain aspects or public-private partnerships between government and industry. The agency says in the memo that the UAS sector is growing, which has placed increasing demands on FAA staffing and resources. It is important to note that this work will be added on to the FAA's already constrained budget. Integrating UAVs into the NAS will require additional resources to support new and ongoing activities. The FAA asked the task group to develop recommendations as to the U.S. community's preferred methods for funding federal activities and services required to support UAS operations for the next 2 years and beyond. Wasmer indicates that a report should be submitted to the DAC not later than June 13, 2017. After the break, a GoFundMe campaign hopes to fight Mexico's mistreatment of general aviation.
There's a difference between charting a steady course and pushing for the ceiling. And for nearly a century, Hartzell Propeller has been defining that difference. It's in our passion for engineering and research and our dedication to testing the limits of performance. We are built on honor. We are Hartzell Propeller.
The Bristol Light Sport aircraft is what you are looking for. The Bristol is wider than a Cirrus, faster than a Skyhawk, offers more storage than a Husky, and comes standard with Garmin avionics. So what are you waiting for? Visit Bristol.com to find out how you can get into a Bristol today.
Welcome back. If you'd like to be a supporter of Airborne Unlimited, send an email to jim@aero-news.net. Last December, pilots visiting Mexico were informed that all foreign aircraft were required to leave the country by January 1st. Failure to do so resulted in aircraft being grounded until a fine of up to $4,000 was paid to Mexico. California resident Brian Conway has established a GoFundMe site to raise money for legal fees for those pilots and owners who are fighting the imposition of the fines. According to Conway, Mexican attorneys that have been engaged by these pilots have determined that no law was broken, and in fact, Mexican authorities have refused to give any written statement to any of the fined pilots delineating what law was broken and what provision of the law determined the amount of the fine, the amount of which varied from airport to airport and airplane to airplane. I would like to raise as much as possible to mount this challenge and let the bureaucrats know that this kind of treatment will not be tolerated or accepted without a fight. Money raised will be used to cover legal fees only and not to pay anyone's fines. The goal for the campaign is $10,000. Nearly $3,000 was raised on the first day. It's Friday, and that means it's time for A&N CEO and Editor-in-Chief Jim Campbell to check in with his weekly barnstorming commentary. One of the things Jim Campbell recently learned from an A&N survey is that the GA community strongly believes that the Aviation Association can't or won't work together, leaving him to ask the aviation associations, can't we all just get along? Here's this week's barnstorming.
Thanks, Chris, and hi, folks. We did a survey earlier this week built around three groups of questions. One was basically revolved around whether or not we were in a position to properly fight ATC privatization, and then if not, why not? And then among the association, who was best equipped to deal with this fight? The results were fascinating. First of all, no major association came out on top. It seemed to be equally split by and large between NBAA, AOPA, and EAA, with a couple of folks throwing in Gamma in the mix. However, one of the things that really bothered me about this was, one, the perception that there's so much airline money going to be thrown against us that we don't stand a chance, and that among the problems that we face in the fight, the ability of the aviation associations to provide a united front to work together and so forth was highly suspect. And this is what I wanted to address right now. To use a well-worn phrase from the past, can we all just get along? Aviation needs now more than ever to work together, to work concertedly. I see from the insiders that the ATC privatization fight may not be as dire right now as we fear, that the Hill isn't looking that kindly on it, but then again, those fortunes can change like that. So we need to make sure that no matter what, we're putting up our best fight. But if not now, then next time, especially when somebody gets their act together and learns how to fight this the proper way from their side. I don't know what's going to happen with all this. The airlines have a lot of money, a lot of political sway in some really unusual ways. They've got a couple of legislators just wrapped around their little fingers. But to make a long story short, the real fight, the real strength in this industry to be able to provide an opposition to ATC privatization doesn't currently exist. We need the aviation associations to get along. We need them to work together. We need to develop a cohesive strategy. We need them to all work together without worrying about who gets the credit, because if we keep fighting about that, there's not going to be much of a worry about who gets the credit, because there won't be much of an industry. Mark my words. The airlines, if they get to run this thing, are going to drive GA business and sport aviation into the dirt. We've got to get together, demand our associations to work together, to work effectively, to build a cohesive, concentrated strategy, and fight like the Dickens. That's how we beat ATC privatization. For the Aero-News Network, Airborne, and Aero-TV, I'm Jim Campbell. Still ready for a fight, but I'd really like to make sure that the fight's a good one.
After these messages, Trump budget has other aero effects.
Since the early days of powered flight, pilots have struggled with landing in crosswinds. In fact, crosswinds and wind gusts cause more landing accidents than fog, thunderstorms, and icing combined. That's where the Redbird X-Wind SE comes in. By placing pilots in gusty crosswind conditions for extended periods of time, the X-Wind SE gives instructors all the time they need to teach the pilot the proper techniques for landing in crosswind conditions. For more information on Redbird X-Wind SE and Redbird's entire line of flight training devices, visit www.redbirdflightsimulations.com.
Sandia introduces the new SAI 340 Quattro TSO'd airspeed, attitude, altitude, and slip. With integral backup battery, safety never looked so good. See it now at www.sandia.aero.
With so much news coming out of the aviation industry, we're summarizing a few of those other great stories in a brief segment we call Around the Patch. President Donald Trump's budget document cuts $175 million from the Essential Airline Services program, and that has lawmakers in several rural states preparing to fight for the subsidy. Senators John Thune and Mike Rounds and Representative Kristi Noem say that they will continue to support the program, which brings access to airline services to rural communities. A police helicopter flying at an altitude of about 400 feet came in contact with a kite string, but fortunately, only thing that was lost was the kite. The Royal Cayman Islands Police Service said that the aircraft was flying when the line hit the kite. Described as a fishing line with a swivel attached, became entangled with the main rotor head of the aircraft. During Sun and Fun, Rotax is offering information sessions conducted by experienced instructors free of charge. These workshops are targeted to those who would like to learn more about Rotax aircraft engines and the Rotax 912 IS Sport aircraft engine installation. The FAA has released its annual aerospace forecast report, fiscal years 2017 to 2037, which projects sustained and continued growth in nearly every aspect of air transportation, from general aviation, private flying, to large commercial airline passenger levels. An airplane parked on a taxiway last week at Spanish Fork Springville Airport in Utah was hit by a Corvette drag racing at the airport. The plane was occupied by a student pilot and instructor engaged in night instruction. While on the taxiway, they noticed that a light was not working properly, so they shut down the airplane to check it out before the collision. Thankfully, no one was injured. Well, that's it for today's trip around the patch now. Let's get back to the rest of the news. President Trump has signed the NASA Transition Authorization Act of 2017 into law. The act authorizes the House's proposed fiscal year 2017 funding level of $19.5 billion and maintains support for the James Webb Space Telescope, the Space Launch System, the Orion Crew Vehicle, the International Space Station, and the Commercial Crew and Cargo programs. Maintaining constancy of purpose for NASA was a recommendation from a recent National Research Council report, recent Aerospace Safety Advisory Panel reports, and numerous other independent groups. Ensuring continued progress on a national level, programs like the Space Launch System and Orion Crew Capsule will ensure that the U.S. continues to push the boundaries of space exploration. Full support for the Commercial Crew program makes progress towards, once again, launching American astronauts on American rockets from American soil. The bill also makes the determination that the technological and scientific goals of the asteroid redirect mission have not been demonstrated and requires a report on alternatives to demonstrate the technologies needed for a human mission to Mars. Acting NASA Administrator Robert Lightfoot said, "We would like to thank President Trump for his support of the agency in signing the National Aeronautics and Space Administration Transition Authorization Act of 2017. Well, that's our program for today. Remember that Airborne Unlimited stream daily, Monday through Friday, with additional breaking news bulletins for important stories that fall outside of our normal deadlines. If you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe. And do check us out on Facebook and Twitter. A comprehensive, real-time, 24/7 coverage, the latest aviation and aerospace stories, anytime at aero-news.net. Keep flying. We'll see you Monday. Anytime at aero-news.net. Keep flying. We'll see you Monday. Stories. Anytime at aero-news.net. Keep flying.